Hey y'all, it's Niver, and this is Niver Niverlands. I am super stoked to tell you that Land O'Lakes has stepped forward to sponsor this podcast. Such a cool thing. I know you know Land O'Lakes products in your grocery store aisle, their butter and their cheese, but as a chef, owner, operator of restaurants, did you know that they also have a line of products specifically designed for food service applications? If you didn't, you do now. It's because I told you here on Niver Niverland. Land O'Lakes is quality cheese. Their extra melt line of sauces, shreds, and loaves will work for you in your workplace. Farmer owned since 1921, Land O'Lakes, when you buy their products, you are supporting more than 1,000 Land O'Lakes farmer owners. And that's a super cool thing. Quality that feels good. Land O'Lakes. Hey y'all, it's Niver, and this is Niver Niverlands, a podcast about the ever-changing restaurant industry. It's brought to you by 36 Lynn Refuel Station, Crybaby Craig's, and Minnesota Ice. And also, a new sponsor, Land O'Lakes. Our person today is Adam Platt. He's an executive editor of Twin Cities Business Magazine. And we kind of took a macro view of things in the Twin Cities, suburbs, the state as a whole, even some national comparisons to where we are now, where we're sitting as a business community in this state. Adam's, again, a super educated dude. He's got good opinions. He forms good opinions, and he's able to display them in such a really articulate way. I think today's show is going to be really good for y'all business owners to listen to, hear, and potentially relate to, huh? All right. Niver Niverland, glad you're here. Hey, this is our friend Adam Platt with us today on Niver Niverland. He is the executive editor of Twin Cities Business Magazine and also does work for the Twin Cities Media Group. Is that right? Is that what you said?
They call it Cities Media Group now.
Cities Media Group, excuse me.
We put out Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Twin Cities Business.
Cool. And you've been involved with those folks for a long time. And here you are now with me on Niver Niverland, isn't it? Are you nervous?
Just a teeny bit. I don't get interviewed very often, actually.
It's really cool that you agreed to do this. And again, I was saying, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to talk about today, but I knew that I could broaden the scope of my questions a little bit. And you tell me if it's a fit for a question or an area of discussion or not. You tell me. Okay.
We'll see if I'm willing to answer a question I don't know.
All right. Well, and that's fine too. The answer I don't know is absolutely perfect. I just don't have that many questions, so you can only pass on one.
Okay.
I'm joking.
That's fine.
We talked about your ability to form strong opinions, and then we talked a little bit about what it's like to have a strong opinion, where and when you can demonstrate a strong opinion about things. I was talking to Matt today about how personally I'm finding at this time in my life that I'm feeling free enough to try to say the things that I want to say. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. I put this in the context of learning. Right? Because I don't know shit still. I can't believe what I learned last year that I didn't already know. As a human, as a business owner, I just think things have been coming at all of us very rapidly. And I've decided to kind of get on and go with it.
Yep.
Because I think people find themselves like myself, I felt sort of isolated as a business owner, trying to make good, as a hospitality person, trying to have an opinion, which is maybe not what we used to do at all, right? And so it's been an interesting dynamic to balance those things, to talk seriously about the realities of having a restaurant and not offending somebody so they don't come and see me. Like, this guy is a fucking blabbermouth or whatever, however they see me. But I want to know, from the outside, because people have heard me say it, what kind of semblance, what does the restaurant industry look like to you, say in the Twin Cities, and maybe what you know of other cities? Fair question?
Yeah, sure. I think, I was talking about this the other day. I feel like it's hard to make a generalization about the economics of restaurants in the Twin Cities right now. I know some restaurateurs who are having their second shit year. And I know some restaurateurs who had a great 22, a better 23, and are having a better 24. And what is driving that in specific, some of it is location, some of it is who their customer is. I think there's a subset of people who are economically stressed, and there's a subset who are not. And as always, it's the businesses that cater to what I would describe as people with more limited disposable income that I think are feeling it. Nationally, if we're just talking about economics, I really don't know how much of what's happening nationally is different than here. It feels like during the post-pandemic years, things were very anomalous, and you had all this money that people had saved, not our family, but a lot of people apparently had saved all this money, and they were just like burning through entertaining themselves, traveling and eating out and going to concerts 6,000 miles away. I feel like that's mostly over. And so we're settling into some sort of normal. But I feel like the pandemic changed people and their habits. The food delivery, not going out, stuff like that. And so I feel like it's a different time, but I don't fully understand, and I don't think we fully understand how it's different.
I do. I mean, I've said this a million times, people's habits have changed. The level of convenience to find what people want is better now. Like the technology shift from just a couple places doing takeout to everybody having to for a while, and now you can get the best takeout and sit, at your house. Right. And I'm like, I really need you in those seats, And then I can see, Dinette's been climbing in gross sales for the last 3 years. And Moochie's has as well. We added a patio, and that certainly has been reflected in overall sales. So while our sales are going up, they're going up at 5-7%, no big spikes. And so I'm seeing a gradual climb back, but it's also those gross sales are reflective of all of the price increases. So my customer counts are down, but my prices are up. And so that's how we're seeing sales growth. But we're not necessarily on the bottom ends finding that money, because just everything is more expensive.
Right. And I think that's what people are experiencing in their everyday life, too.
Yes. No, it's super common. Like, I'm actually, because of where I am in my life, going out more. My wife has a new job, and actually we have the least amount of money we've had, that bringing in 10 years. But and we're doing good. It's still that we believe we need to invest in our lives now, and so we're taking the time to go out, go to Berlin and listen to music, and increase those joyful moments, because for us that's what's kind of been missed and what we got out of the habit of doing. So I'm like everybody else. It's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand the desire to stay home. The thing that really the pandemic did to me was it made me stir crazy, right? I mean, I was not going out, but I was like leaving the house just to leave the house, right? And so the idea that for some people, what the pandemic did was it kind of reacquainted them with domesticity, and that they're content to pay, I don't know what you pay to get McDonald's delivered to your home, or, a grilled cheese and fries.
You can get anything delivered to your house.
Just sounds so depressing to me. but it's real. It's a phenomena.
And it's convenience. What would you say, if you're looking, when you gave me that restaurant answer and how restaurants are doing now here in the Twin Cities, what were you answering mostly for the cities themselves? What are the suburbs much different?
I feel like suburban restaurants are on average doing better than city restaurants. I believe there is a subset of suburban customers, who will not come into the city.
Well, there definitely is.
And that would have come into the city a decade ago.
Absolutely.
And
what are they afraid of?
They're afraid of crime.
Do you think they have better food out there? Anywhere, like you've seen improvements in the suburbs. Restaurateurs are moving there.
Right. Jester just opened a restaurant in the suburbs.
Well, is Edina a suburb?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so they opened another restaurant.
I kind of feel like
suburb.
Linden Hills is a suburb in that sense.
Sure.
I mean, I think somebody who lives in Bloomington will go to Linden Hills to eat, but they won't go downtown.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I've noticed. Like Lower Town is a destination now. Makes me a little sad to say it.
Right.
But it's further away than even, Excel, which is 1.5 miles away. And then you find Moochie's in a neighborhood that didn't turn over. These are people that have been in the neighborhood for a long time, or newly professional people in an area where they can afford a home and not kill their monthly ability to spend in restaurants. So that, I just see that as being like the complete difference.
I mean, the downtown stuff makes me really sad because I feel like, I moved to the Twin Cities in 81 to go to college. I became a permanent resident in 85, so it's nearly 40 years. And the thing that I observed was like a 40-year effort to build up the downtowns. The Twin Cities has some stuff working against it. Having two downtowns is not really to your advantage. It hasn't helped Tampa, St. Pete. At least they have a body of water separating them. And so to me, it's always like, well, we're dividing our resources. We're competing with each other. But it is what we've got here. George Latimer died yesterday, Sunday. He was the mayor when I moved to St. Paul. And I remember downtown St. Paul in the 80s. And it felt incredibly vibrant compared to now. And I just think of all those people who spent all those years trying to build these downtowns into places that approximated Chicago or who knows, San Francisco, Seattle, places with busy downtowns. And to see that both downtowns just so relatively emptied out, it's just like, it's going to take a generation, 2 generations to build that back. It's sort of like chasing your tail.
That long?
I feel like at least one. The work from home thing is really problematic for downtowns. It's really
hard.
It's really hard. And there are people who want to work from home for whom it's not good for them, actually, either psychologically, socially, professionally, but they still insist on it. And so there's major resistance. And I think a lot of businesses, they save a lot of money by downsizing their office footprint. And, you do have some businesses who are insisting on office presence, but I think we're in a long-term worker shortage. I just think demographics, the birth rate, colleges are about to get hit by a big drop in the birth rate, which started in the Great Recession. And I just think there's not enough workers.
Why would they call a recession great?
I think it was like you're riffing on the Great Depression, like it was the biggest recession. But so there's going to be chronic population shortages unless they can really make automation and AI work in amazing ways. I think workers are going to have leverage, and work from home is going to be a big part of that leverage for an ongoing basis. And I live in the city of Minneapolis. My property taxes are going to go up, just the city portion, 9% next year. And the next year's going to be worse. And the county's raising my property taxes, and the park district and the schools. It's like, and the taxes are already high. And I'm not like an anti-tax guy, but it's a problem for the city. you don't want people moving out because the taxes are too high, as opposed to just like an ideology thing. But so I don't know. There's just work from home has really created a lot of chaos, and it's still kind of in the washing machine, and we don't know what it's going to look like in the end. And so,
well, and I hate to harp on it because I really understand why people want to work at home. I totally get it. But I talk about it in terms of volume. When we had, 2019 before the pandemic, the volume of the city was probably at a 5 every day. Starting at a 5, ending at a 5 every day. And then, you get to a Thursday, Friday, Saturday with people already down here. They end up planning things down here. And you get to a good 6, 7, maybe an 8 sometimes.
Yep.
Rarely do we see a 10, right? But the city filled up. We had conventions. Now we literally start at 2, and I don't know that we bump to 3 during the week at all. And then, event nights, Palace, Fitzgerald, Excel, those nights, we can see, depending on the artist and the demographic of the artist, if we can predict what we're going to be, how busy we're going to be. Right?
Who's a good artist for dinette?
Well, there's a lot of them. Barry Manilow is actually really good for us, right? And because
nice.
Because he's kind of fun and whatever. We even had some pre-Metallica business, nothing crazy. Saints is helpful, but when you go to a game, you're going to a game. You dress for a game. You're going to get a dome dog or whatever the hell they're called now.
Right.
You're going to get a beer. You're going to sit in the park. You're going to have some ice cream. You're going to get a little messy and sweaty.
Yep.
So they have a thing to do. It's just really hard how it gets separated and how close we are. And it is a bummer that people work from home for me, because I know that volume was a lot higher in the city. And, a restaurateur could feel bad about not being as busy as they want to be. That's for sure. We don't like to talk about it if it's slow. That was part of the reason I talk about it. Hey, man, we've leaned this thing down so far that everybody's better at their job. We have less people doing more. And there's no other way this place would, say, break even or get to the end of its lease, without having it be as lean as possible still. I say, we're charging more. There's less people too. So
restaurateurs are very reluctant to talk about economic distress. They always want to, and maybe that's most business people, they always want to put a positive face on it.
Yeah, it's not hospitable.
I think it's worked to their disadvantage in this community in a number of respects, one of which is this perception among people who are workers and workers advocates, let's put it that way, that all busy restaurants are highly profitable. And, one thing I've learned in this business is that if you see a full restaurant, that doesn't tell you anything about its bottom line. And also that people go into this business for different reasons than they go into most businesses. If you're going to buy a widget manufacturing business, you're going to buy that business because you are convinced you can make a consistent profit year after year, and it works to your skill set or whatever. I know people who got in the restaurant business because it's sexy. They love restaurants, and they just want to have one. And
it is.
And it's
very sexy. See?
It's the same reason people found airlines. The airline business is probably one of the few businesses that are worse than the restaurant business, and it's the same sort of thing. Like, why did you want to get into this business? It just seemed like a lot of fun. Okay.
It's an absolute ball. Well, the rules have changed so much, though, too. The rules have changed dramatically, especially in the cities. Minimum wage and sick time, and I believe in all of these things.
Yeah, right.
I believe in all of these things.
That's the dilemma.
That's the dilemma, right? But it's I guess it's like that, the action, and then it can totally create an imbalance. So what about something for the businesses, right? Like we wanted tip credit. I mean, we're like one of 5 states that doesn't do it. Guam does it. Oh no, Guam doesn't. Sorry.
Although it's interesting. So like on Friday, I'm flying to Detroit because my daughter is starting at the University of Michigan. And she's done some hospitality work the last couple of summers. And she's applying for a restaurant job in Ann Arbor. And one of the things she learned is that Michigan has tip credit. And the base wage is $3.89 an hour. And so, my whole mantra about restaurant work, find a high volume restaurant and you will do better per hour than any other type of, hourly labor. Yep. I don't know if that's going to hold. I said to her, you're going to have to figure out how much you make per hour and whether it's any better than you'd make working in the library.
Yeah.
Because if you work in the library, you can probably do your homework.
Sure.
You can't do that if you're hosting or serving at a restaurant.
Place like that. But it doesn't have to be that extreme.
No.
You could take it back, say, to 2020 wages, to $10 an hour.
Plus tips.
Uh-huh. I mean, that would be a dramatic change for me.
Yep.
And it's still, not out of, that would be kind of a sexier tip credit, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And
10 an hour base and let's go, like give the restaurants a minute you have to give something back.
Right.
Because we have to find, as owners, we have to find the opportunities exist.
Right.
That or that things are coming back, or, there's got to be a reason, some forecastable scenario that helps. And we haven't had one.
A bunch of high profile restaurants have to close and say it's because we can't make money anymore. And maybe that will get the tip credit is a hard thing to explain to people. And the other thing that really I think has hurt restaurants is the Me Too era that sort of predated the pandemic and that period of distress. Because I think restaurants went from having this reputation as cool places to work and cool places to be to a business kind of controlled by angry chefs who abused people and exploited people. And a lot of the kind of younger people, millennials, Gen Z, absorbed a lot of that stuff. And the industry has a different reputation than it had 15 years ago.
Yeah, it sure does.
Even though I don't know, I can't really speak to how common the place those sort of abuses was. I know kitchens are high pressure environments, but I don't really know if 5% of the restaurants in the Twin Cities had kind of difficult, high pressure, abusive, or quasi abusive, what depends how you define abuse, environments, or if half of them did. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be in a position to know.
Well, and we're also kind of evolving into understanding our language more and how we have to use our language more, right? Like, there's just so many different types of people, young people now, and I have to be really careful and cautious about the things I say, but also we have a trusting environment and an open environment and a transparent environment, and there aren't that many people around. But it is a different generation. They see things differently. They understand what they will and won't take. They weren't, say, brought up in the industry when it was, when every industry was a little bit more raucous.
Right.
Where HR was a thing, but now we're super duper careful. And we should be better at this, right?
Although, yes, I think, though, it is okay for some types of businesses to just have a different personality than other types. I don't know that it, I remember when my son, my older kid, when he was 16 and he went to work in a restaurant in Minneapolis, kind of an edgy restaurant. And the first weekend he worked, he came home and he told me he'd been propositioned by a customer. And then he told me some jokes that he had heard in the kitchen. And he found it all hilarious, right? He was a 16-year-old boy, kind of, not super sensitive, good sense of humor, felt like he had just entered into the adult world for the first time and was really enjoying it. But I could also see an environment where that might happen on your first day, and you'd be like, this is horrific. This is hostile. This is the rest of the business's fault, and I need to complain to some official body to get this stopped. And I guess sometimes
Are
I
you
tell
talking about
people,
the Labor Standards Board? Is that what you're thinking?
oh, no. Well, yeah, I guess you could. I hadn't thought of that. But just like, this is intolerable. And I just think it's not the worst thing in the world to say, this is a type of business that might not appeal to someone who is highly sensitive compared to other types of business. Maybe this isn't right for people who can't stand, certain types of humor and certain types of behaviors and, colleagues who drink after the shift and whatever. I don't know. I hate the idea that every workplace has to be turned into the same kind of flat, bland, monochromatic thing so that no one gets honked off.
Yeah. And for me, that's what we're actually trying to instill in people, is that when they come in, it's got to feel a way, and it does have to have an attitude and a presence of its own, with all the other external factors out there. When somebody walks into your joint, you still have an opportunity to make them feel a way. And you really, I think that is the essence of a good restaurant. Is maybe it's not the best restaurant, maybe it's maybe it's not fine dining, maybe it's like super casual, but the way you feel when you walk in there, or just the authenticity of the folks, or whatever it is. I mean, that obviously changes things. But having some of these, say, negative, or say in the Me Too, these bad chefs, and I really find that because people don't take shit as much, that helps clean up some of the crap. Like it's worth it. It's worth it that we're evolving into like a more sensitive, compassionate style of management. It's worth it to me because in my business, I need to, in a way, I'm connecting professionally. Here's our standard, but also at the end of the day, there's 10 of us, so for me, it's a little different. It feels a little more personal, whether you like it or not. But I think that translates to our guest.
I feel like no workplace should be a place where people are demeaned, right? And so I take your point that the industry is better because of what transpired in the Me Too era. Assuming that there was a broad-based reckoning, that it wasn't just Mario Batali and John Besh or whoever, but it trickled down. I guess the question is can we have a happy medium where people who like a certain type of environment say, yeah, the restaurant industry is for me, and other people who don't maybe say, it's not for me, but that's okay because there's other types of jobs that are for me.
Well, and a lot of people left the industry. I was really happy about it for them. These jobs can be a means to an end for people, though. Temporary fits on their way to something else. That's been a cool thing to see for me as a business owner, people's path, and being able to support them on their way. And the ability to make a decent amount of money as a server is based on your ability to talk to people, and that's why there's a pay gap. And to even a pay gap out is a very difficult thing, as we find in our society, right? But also, there are certain people just get paid more,
right?
Like entertainers get paid more than somebody else sometimes. So like I just there's just a lot of things maybe that we're fighting against in our industry that make us even look worse. Like Me Too is a big change, right? But like the discussion of tips and going to service charges, that was a ruffle the industry had to deal with on its own. Like, we're all going to X standard service charge, and then other places weren't. And then it becomes an inconvenience or something that you have to think about that's not necessarily just dining. You've turned your menu over and there's a whole litany of things, and so dining's become kind of, there's certain aspects of it that are less sexy now too. You really have to look at that bill.
Yeah.
Like tipping versus service charge. It's just these are all little ruffles that make it less attractive, kind of.
Well, and ironically, tipping has now become more ingrained in our society. I remember in the mid-teens when people were arguing at the legislature that tipping was a relic of the 18th century and designed to exploit women and blah, 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 blah. And maybe it was. I don't know that the 18th century origins of anything have a lot of relevance to today, but, people wanted tipping outlawed. Well, then in the pandemic, tipping was the way a lot of people were able to, people tipped wildly generously when
Unbelievable.
at restaurants. And then, places like stadiums and ballparks started making, now that everybody's paying with a credit card, you put a tip prompt on the machine and suddenly everybody's wages who work in those pretty much minimum wage environments started making 25% more without the business having to pay them any differently. And that was hugely transformative to their ability to attract employees, for people to make something closer to a living wage in those environments. And then all of a sudden, all the talk about eliminating tipping stopped because suddenly tipping was providing a huge economic lift to people working at the subsistence level. And so, I think there's a theoretical, esoteric conversation, and then there's a practical conversation, and I tend to be more interested in the practical conversation.
I saw yesterday.
Well, go ahead. I was just going to say, Peter Callahan of MinPost was in the Seattle airport, and he was tweeting about how he was at some sort of automated venue in the airport where he bought something with his card, and then you take it out of it's a grab and go type thing, and it asked if you wanted to leave a tip. 18%, 20%, 20, 22%. And he's like, how much do I tip in this situation? and I was like, okay, we are a little bit through the looking glass.
Who gets that fucking money?
Right.
The person who fills it? I mean, the
person who fills the cabinet, or I have no idea. I think businesses are seeing what they can get away with at this point. What people are, where people's limits are.
The other part of this, we were talking about rising prices. We're talking about ability to make profit. We're talking about just some of the realities of this.
Super sexy conversation.
Well, here we are, right? And this is like, these are bigger issues. This is like not just St. Paul. I know other cities are going through these same things. You hear about Seattle, you hear about San Francisco. Just that the face of a lot of cities has changed. So a lot of them that were shut down.
I was in San Diego a couple of weeks ago. Downtown San Diego is radically changed over a decade ago. I was shocked.
Busy, slow,
emptied out. There were whole office high rises with chain link fencing around them because they had no tenants, no occupants. The Gaslamp District, which was the hot nightlife district a decade ago, is just seedy as F now. People living on the street, people vomiting on the street. It looked like kind of nightlife. It's kind of the arc of what happens to these hot nightlife districts, where they sort of play themselves out and they stop attracting the cool kids, and they're just like attracting the frat boys or whatever. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Gaslamp looked very beat up and put away wet. The business district was basically deserted. The other areas of town, I guess, are quite vibrant, but it's just weird. It's weird being in these. It's like, why would you go to once you've seen the zoo and Balboa Park and had a fish taco, it's like, why would you go back to San Diego now?
Oh, shit.
Right? And there probably are better reasons than I'm articulating.
There's other neighborhoods that have probably emerged since.
But all the hotels
downtown.
are downtown and stuff. And it's like, how do you discover where the fun parts of the city are? And how do you get there? And, downtown Minneapolis felt immensely more vibrant than downtown San Diego, which just floored me because San Diego has so much tourism. And tourism is found money for hospitality businesses. You're not dependent on local customers. It's people who are in town with a mindset to spend. I've always felt like that's a real disadvantage that the hospitality businesses face in the Twin Cities restaurants, is that they're so little tourism outside of key sort of periods where a lot of people are coming for, Minneapolis has a pretty vibrant convention business in the summer.
Do you think we have an identity issue nationally?
Yes, I do, but I would say it's an identity issue that most non-top 10 markets face. We have a weather issue, a lot of the year. But I do think in general...
What about George Floyd and how that affected his murder, how that affected, say, overall tourism?
That's interesting. I think a lot of people don't really understand. You see glimpses of Minneapolis on the national news or something over the course of 3 or 4 days, and then it drops off again, and you don't see anything, and so you're left with those. I don't know what people really think of Minneapolis. I see people tweeting this week that Chicago is such a surprisingly interesting and fun place. They're there for the DNC. And I'm like, really? You didn't know that Chicago was an interesting and fun place, third largest city in the country? But there's a lot of people who live on the coasts who don't really think there's much of anything between Las Vegas and the East Coast that's worth the effort.
And for the majority of cities in between where you just mentioned, you were right.
Right. Denver. Mm-hmm. But Chicago?
I think Denver's hot. I think Denver's
been very hot. Although I hear downtown Denver is struggling too.
Yeah, it's been, yes. Maybe Colorado's hot. I don't know.
Well, a lot of people have moved to Denver. It's weird because the Denver metro area is still smaller than the Twin Cities, but people think it's a much bigger city.
It's cooler. It's got mountains, right? We have lakes, but you can't.
Well, the mountain thing is, it used to be that a lot of people moved to Denver and just got out of Dodge on the weekend. They went into the mountains, and I still think that's a phenomenon, not as much as it used to be. But
affordability in general of that ski life is upside down,
I would guess.
Yes, it really is. The affordability of living in one of the valleys. I got buddies out there. I used to live out there, and it's crazy. It's like... My buddy's got a condo and he's had it forever, and it's like triple value. Triple.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Right.
They've been there. They're like the old salt there now. But shit. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's a difficult dilemma if the community, if Minneapolis and St. Paul want to decide where to focus our efforts. What can we do to really move the needle? Is tourism a realistic play? Is it bringing more events? Is it getting companies to go back to 3 days a week in office? I think those are all good. Those would all help the downtowns. I don't know which one of them would be the most effective area to. I think there are people making efforts on all fronts. There's a specific private entity or public-private entity that literally does nothing but tries to bring major sporting events to the Twin Cities.
Yeah. Well, when we peak, like, the cities can be good. We had a slide over here and a light show over here, and the market and the train station here in St. Paul, Minnesota, and
Christmas time.
The Christmas time. The month of December was so fucking good. We couldn't believe it. It saved us. It literally saved the entire year.
And you couldn't have predicted it.
Couldn't have predicted it. Glad that it happened. Obviously, but then you go into January and you're like, ooh, the air is out of the balloon. Forecasting what we're going to see has just been really, really hard. Tourism is down. You don't see the badges. You don't see people walking around with their lanyards anymore. It's really been a tough part of bringing some sort of, reestablishing those visits has been hard. And I think identity has really been the thing. Nobody seems to be really confident about where Minneapolis is heading. People really love Mayor Carter, and I do too. I think he's really good. But also, for businesses, for the street to thrive, businesses have to. There's got to be a reason to go down there. For businesses to thrive, obviously you have to have people there. I don't know that you're going to get people back downtown, and I just think this identity is something we need to work through, because we need those tourism dollars, we need more visits, And when the visits happen, we're all better.
Yep.
But those folks who decided not to come down to the downtowns because it's unsafe or unsavory or what have you, you know, that's a real problem too that we face. And so the realism is that it's just a little bit harder to do everything that we do, you know, like just a little bit harder to do everything we do. And I think it stops that.
I think
there's no cultivating. There's no cultivating business. There's no like, we're all on our own,
right,
taking the biggest risk to try to provide something that we believe in, but there's no cultivation really of, you know, or support of that entrepreneurial spirit. Or the city is good at taking care of its people, but on the other hand, it doesn't necessarily consider the businesses are making those people get paid. You know, like I think small businesses are people in a way. I've said this before. Like it acts like a person. It takes care of people on a certain level, right? All of us are on a certain level. You know, owners of restaurants aren't like on some stratospheric, you know, income level at all. I promise you, most of us aren't. But we definitely are the ones that are paying for the policies, with the changes.
Right.
And we definitely need to have a little bit of care given to us. And that's what I'm kind of trying to bring to light. Like, you really have to, for the culture to thrive, for the cities to thrive, you have to have a way for the businesses to be there. So they're not blank, so they're not dark. So as critical as minimum wages for employees, some sort of help on the business side would definitely be attractive to people now. You know, that could maybe help business owners be in the city now, you know.
Well, I think we're in it's not a great insight to say we're living in a very polarized time. There are a lot of people have come to view business as an exploitive force in society, kind of a necessary evil. I've been covering business for over a decade and observing certain industries for longer in other parts of my jobs. And the thing that I've really come to is that most of the excesses and quote unquote evils perpetrated by business are perpetrated by large businesses who sort of cease to see the big picture and only exist for their own betterment. Small businesses, to me, are like you described. They're almost like a human organism. I've never known a small business person who didn't care deeply about their employees, who saw the business's success as inextricably connected to their employees' success and ability to build a life and, you know, have enough to eat, blah, blah, blah. And I think the part of the problem now is we're in these sort of two ideological camps, whether you're talking about city government, state government, county government, and there needs to be some kind of, you know, pooling of the olive oil and balsamic vinegar, some integration, because you can't have a humanistic functioning society without businesses that are providing incomes for most of those people. Government can't make everyone whole, and I think there's a lot of young people who somehow believe that it could, that if government just, you know, if we stopped building missiles and bombs and just started giving everyone money, we wouldn't need all these businesses or whatever. It's a really kind of odd reductionist kind of outlook, but that's kind of where we're at. You know, everybody is it's very hard to find people with nuanced perspectives. Everybody's at one or the other pole right now, and
you and I had a quick conversation about absolutism, and how they, you know, because things haven't worked for so fucking long to provide change, right?
Right.
You kind of got to be like, no more of this bullshit. It's all got to go. Burn it down.
Right. No incrementalism. F that.
I mean, me being my age, I agree that I haven't seen a lot of fucking change.
Right.
But I don't agree to with say absolutism, I don't agree with that necessarily, because I just don't see things happening overnight.
Right.
And maybe they shouldn't. because it's just like, you have to keep fighting for what you believe in. The struggle is real, as they say. You have to keep fighting for what you believe in. I think certain political tickets just really take us back, so far still. Biden not being in there is really helpful to my mentality, because while I can understand why people are pissed at him, like the general idea of this guy is pretty good. Kamala and picking walls makes me feel like, there's a dude in there with a non-toxic masculine persona. Like, I can see really good in it, and I just don't know how far they can take change if they were, elected. What happens if Walz leaves the state? What about Flanagan? What does that look like for Minnesota? There's a lot of interesting things and big picture stuff happening. You mentioned the corporate entities and how they are there to benefit themselves. I've used a mainline distributor for numerous years because I believed that combining all of my purchase power towards a business would provide me with some volume discounts, which it did. It does. But just over the last 2 months, I've had to talk to all my distributors and be like, listen, I know everything is overpriced. I know it. I have a 46-seat restaurant, but I'm going to create my own competition amongst you because I'm tired of it. So I'm just not going to buy anymore from one place because it's convenient or whatever, because it's 8 to 10% more for me to buy shit over last year. Food costs. It's just insane. So, I'm not opposed to people making money. The CEO makes 22 million, whatever, for this food distributor, right? Like, whatever. Like, I don't have a problem with that, but I see what you're doing to me, dude.
Right. Well,
I can feel it every day, bro. And you can't just keep, I don't want to use the word gouging, though Kamala has, and how that could be disruptive, or if there's some cap on pricing or helpful. I don't know. Like, economically, I've a lot of times said we need to have this be market driven in terms of wages. We need to have it be market driven in terms of this, but at this point, I see myself getting kind of snuffed by a bigger business.
Right.
And it's really, I should be the one you're taking care of.
You would hope. I just did a story for Minneapolis St. Paul for their breakfast brunch issue about the kitchen at Good Day Cafe in Golden Valley, which to me is the most amazing short order kitchen in town.
It's good there.
And just the speed and the number of people and the number of dishes on the menu and the fact that they do everything from scratch. But I was as I got a tour of the kitchen and the back areas from Jeff Peterson, the general manager, I said, how much time do you spend back here supervising the line? And he's like, not that much anymore. He said, I have to spend an enormous amount of time on purchasing. He said, we haven't raised prices in 18 months, but the only reason I've been able to avoid it is because now I go to Costco to get my berries, and I go to Restaurant Depot to get this.
Yes.
And he has a big old vehicle that he drives all over town to pick up stuff for the restaurant.
That's the only way.
And he says, I'm just constantly looking for a better price for the things we buy a lot of.
Yes.
And he said that was not the way it was before.
No. We're small places. I have small places. So I don't like a lot of people in and out of the fucking door. I understand the offerings, but most people have broadliners, obviously have so much stuff. They even have local stuff. They even have organic stuff. They even have, whatever. They have it, most of it, right? And local produce even, so everything can be local, but you make the order, you send the order, and then, they give you the printout, and you're like, okay, what was this last week? Or, the rep used to come by with the price changes, or, they used to be open and honest with it. They were market driven there. So they kept the margin a certain level on every product as the price went up or down. And now they're just like, oh, we can get this for this. We can get this for this. They need it. We can get this for this. We're keeping it high. You know, we don't know. I mean, their sales are going up. This food company's sales are going up. They're like, improved cost of goods sold. And I'm like, sure, they're just raising the prices. So you have an improved cost of goods sold. I'm like, fuck, I'm paying that price for you.
Well, and it's interesting because grocery is one of the lowest margin business sectors in the country. There was some stat.
1 and 2 and 3% if you're lucky.
Right. I think right now the current average is 1.8.
Yeah.
There was some article about how grocery margins have really gone up in the last couple of years, but it's from like 1.18 to 1.81 kind of margin. But I don't know in the wholesale sector that you deal with, I have no idea how that works. I mean, I remember when I was a little kid, when Nixon was president, it's amazing, a Republican president they had wage and price controls because they were trying to tame inflation that was much more intractable than what we seem to have had, where it seems disproportionately connected to food right now.
Yeah.
And it didn't work very well. I don't know why it didn't work. I don't know what the dynamics of what President Harris could institute that would be effective. But yeah, it's like, how do you figure out who's gouging and how do you control it when there isn't enough competition in the sector for there to be many alternatives?
Yeah.
And I don't know, is that different than 40 years ago? You know, consolidation in industries has just been rampant, you know, mergers. And so how many vendors do you have to buy from?
Well, we have a lot of, I mean, there's less, say, broad lines that I want to consider. Some of them are more specialized now. You have Fortune, and they have so many things that they're acquiring and doing, and they're doing a really nice job.
Seafood.
Yeah. But they distribute a lot now. You know, and
tartar sauce.
And it's not, it's not even, say, you know, I don't think they're probably even immune to having their prices a little bit higher. You know, their quality of service is pretty good too. You know, so like there are things that matter with those, with the distributors that could make me spend a little bit more money. You know, like we have not sacrificed any quality. We just can't buy anything less than or different than we're buying. So that price goes up, you know, if you're really dedicated to that. We could have changed our burger meat at Dinette a million times. And we've only changed it like 3 because we're very specific about it. You know, the $20 burger is real now, right? You know, ours isn't. No, it doesn't come with fries, but it's really the best, most simple burger you can get, you know, like, and we just could not just take it down to like whatever ground beef 80-20, you know, don't have butter in it, don't, you know, smash it like a lot of places do. We just
a lot of places.
I just don't want to do that.
So here's a question for you, or I'm not allowed to ask a question, but one thing I was thinking about the other day to go from sublime to ridiculous. How did the smashburger win? I have a subset of people in my family. They're all over 65, and they're men and women whose idea of a great burger was a thick burger that is medium rare to rare, cooked on a griddle maybe, but mostly charcoal kind of. The smashburger era is killing them. They hate them. They won't eat them.
It's too bad.
And they're like, where did the old style burgers go? It's an interesting question.
Isn't this an old style burger though?
The smashburger? Well, maybe it is in a different way.
In a diner way, you know.
Right, because it has history. Like if you follow George Motz and all that,
yes,
that's true. But I am interested in the idea of how it won. How it seems to have supplanted the old fashioned burgers.
It's that skirt, baby. It's that crunch. And I like a medium rare burger from time to time, but everything falls off those. And like, I don't know. It's like it's cumbersome.
It's interesting
to me.
Yeah.
And
there's more.
I don't know how
cheese
many
to meat
smash burgers
ratio
I had until I went to Osha Ball.
Yeah.
in my life, actually.
Right,
So I
right.
think I made the old burgers like you and like your subset of people who like the fat burgers.
Right.
Anyway, I think I used to be the fat burger guy.
Because we're not an In-N-Out market.
No. But then Culver's came through with them too, huh?
Kind of. I don't know. I'm not as big a Culver's fan as some people.
Andrew Zimmern is a big Culver's
I know
fan.
Andrew loves Culver's. I just like,
He's on their ads. He's
I
like,
know. You got to melt the damn cheese. Everything I don't go to Culver's a ton, but every time I go now, the burger, the cheese isn't melted. It's like they just threw it together, and nothing was particularly hot when they threw it together, so everything is just sort of lukewarm. I don't know.
In fact, I met you at Restaurant Aquavit with, I think it was the first time I met you. I like trying to remember the first time I met people. But you were as Steve Carlson, former editor, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Steve, publisher.
Okay, wait. Brian Anderson was the former editor of Minneapolis, St. Paul.
You were
back
with
then.
Andrew Zimmern.
Okay, I was with Andrew because
And
sure,
he
Andrew
had
was writing for us.
I think he was fresh off a Fox 9 shoot because he had like a black
Okay.
velour chef coat on. I wonder if he still has it, honestly.
Maybe.
And then I just remember you being there. That was, you sat, I think it was table 22. It was kind of off in the corner. Like you walk into the room and turn left and walk straight ahead. I remember the three of you sitting there, and
Who
Eric.
were we with?
He was a magazine dude.
Okay. I loved that room.
That was really great then, huh?
Oh my God. That room was so beautiful. You know, you always felt underdressed in it.
I did, even. Like the way Marcus would look me up and down before service. You know,
Really?
like, okay, all right. Maybe
And then towards the end, we were just like, they are giving the food away. The lunch, what was the lunch special?
$10 lunch special. It was like
Multi-course?
Yeah, well, multi-course or like a pick of gravlax or fish and chips or whatever. Yeah, man. I mean, post 9/11,
Okay. Yeah.
post 9/11, right? We were a couple of years in. A lot of corporate travel stopped. You know, we saw a lot of like downturn and any visits then too. You know, technology's improved enough that you don't have to travel from city to city to see folks. Anyway, well, that hurt then. That was but an interesting time.
Yeah, that was a special restaurant. Although after it closed, I did a long story about it. Interviewed Hakan Svan, the owner. He had a great quote. What was it? I forget the name of the investor who convinced Hakan to expand. But I remember him saying to me in his Swedish accent, he told us that Minneapolis was Stockholm or Oslo in the Midwest on the prairie. And what we realized was that it was Dallas. Basically, it was just the taste where it was an American city, a Midwestern, middle American city with middle American tastes. And that once you got beyond meatballs, the local taste for Scandinavian fare really kind of petered out. Because all people really had were their taste memories. This immigration had happened 100 years ago.
Yeah, we did a lutefisk lunch there a couple of times.
Really?
Yes.
Did you sell a lot?
A decent amount.
Okay.
Yeah. It felt like kind
They
of like
empty
a
out
church.
the senior citizens' homes on buses. They bring them in.
But, you know, he was definitely an innovator, and he brought fucking Charlie Trotter to town and so many other.
That was an intense place to work. I understand.
Rocco DeSpirito is in there. Charlie Trotter. Rocco. I mean, Marcus and all of his buddies. It was really kind of an amazing thing for Minneapolis. But at the same time, while he was, you know, Gavin reminds me a lot of him bringing the folks in and really like, you know, trying to instill some of the coastal scenarios, you know, here and the coastal feelings here, bringing people to us. I really admire him and appreciate him doing that. Anyway.
There's like what I always say to people, you know, when they're like, why can't the Twin Cities support more? I feel like the Twin Cities can support a limited number of fine dining restaurants. And that's kind of the cap. And it hasn't really changed over the years.
Yeah.
And once you get over the cap, somebody's got to fall off the cliff, to mix metaphors.
Yeah. Well, the turnover that we're, seeing, and some of the, say the students of some other mentors that have opened, Boucheron, Diane's place, it's nice to see those places coming. I see it's this Hopkins revival where you're seeing places open just over the Minneapolis border
in
in
downtown?
Hopkins. Yep. And this is interesting to me because I think people are just seeing those slight differences just across the border from the city that are offering them a little more opportunity. Pink Ivy, there's some good places going on. And all that we're talking about today is just trying to like zone in on a feeling of where we're headed. And I don't know. I still don't know. It's really hard to figure out a forecast for this industry.
Yeah, I mean, it in one sense, I feel like eating out is more ingrained a part of the American lifestyle than ever. I feel like for a lot of people, cooking is like not part of their deal. And so in that sense, I feel like the demand for eating out is going to remain strong. But what people want to do in that realm is evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And how that plays out, Wayzata used to be kind of a wasteland for food. Now there's a lot of good places to eat.
Yeah, competition out there.
And the standard has been raised.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that, it used to be said out here that people with money didn't necessarily have taste in food. Like this is I think the only market that ever has seen a Bloomingdale's close, a Neiman Marcus close, a Saks close, and that there's just something about the way people spend here, affluent people spend, this whole idea that, they go on trips and spend, but here they want to, eat at Sunsets and get chicken wings and a chicken breast sandwich. But that's changed
true, right?
somewhat. There is some truth to it. But I think now you do find good restaurants in the suburban areas that you didn't used to see. A limited number.
Sure. So that obviously takes people away why would I leave my house on the lake to go to Minneapolis when I can go 3 miles over here?
Right.
And have a much, all right. It's certainly Wayzata's development has changed some of the downtown. Is North Loop saturated?
Gosh, you would think so. A guy I know, an investment guy, called me the other day and said he had a client who wanted to open a restaurant in the North Loop, and what were my thoughts on that? And I was just like, really? I just think in terms of rents and competition, I feel like the high-end restaurants in the North Loop are holding their own, but a lot of the mid-priced restaurants are challenged.
What about the Mill District, West End? What's your foresight there?
The Mill District seems under-restauranted. I don't know why. There's a lot of people living there. We had this fantasy.
I like that answer. So Mill District could potentially be underserved, so close to North Loop.
Right. But there's a lot of people living near Uptown.
Mm-hmm.
When everybody asks me what's my long-term projection for Uptown or what's going to happen to Uptown, I say, it's got good bones. There's the lakes. There's tons of people living there. Uptown is going to come back. How long it takes, I have no idea.
It's been years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was declining before George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
And it's complicated. There's never one factor. There's often too many inputs to figure out what is driving it. Rents got too high in Uptown, and the only places that could afford to open were places that did huge volumes of alcohol sales. And so that's how the mix started to change, And at a certain point, things, the mix changes enough that, Phil Roberts, one of the founders of Parasole, who's still at it in his 80s, used to say in the Filio heyday, he used to say the great thing about Uptown is it drew from 4 different neighborhoods, all with different residential demographics. It was just perfect for restaurants. And they had Chino Latino, and they had Filio. I think at one time they had another restaurant in Uptown. And then that started changing, and Uptown stopped doing that. And the kind of the western quadrant started going to the West End and places like that, and parts of the neighborhood got too gritty, and people's cars got broken into, or there was somebody, peeing when they got back to their vehicle from one of the nightclubs. And so Uptown didn't do that anymore. And now Uptown has a whole new set of problems, but it still has a lot of people living there in the lakes.
Yeah. A great little neighborhood. I wish I could have stayed. I wish I could have stayed. I was a little bit further away, like Lynn Lake, but I wish I could have stayed. I just couldn't weather it. I mean,
right. And because how long? You don't know how long you have to weather it, because you're dealing with perceptual problems now too. And then the road construction. I mean, it was fascinating to me that
I was on the town. We opened the Town Talk when they ripped up Lake Street, and people were walking across like a plank.
Oh, I remember that kind of.
To getting into the restaurant. We made it through.
Are people less likely to inconvenience themselves now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And I totally get that. Like, it's easier to do something else. I think we are.
Yeah.
We're
a very convenience-driven society right now. I mean, all the things, like I remember, people used to lug big cameras around because they were mostly concerned about photo quality. We used to listen to music off, stereo systems, and now everything is digitized and compressed, and the phone cameras have gotten really better, but they're still not the equivalent. But we are a convenient society. We just want it really accessible.
It's all at our fingertips, bro.
Right.
All right. So let me look at my scenario here one more time. Talked about the Twin Cities a little bit. We looked at the restaurant industry as a whole. Do you think people in general and under other industries tell you that it's expensive to do business here, not just restaurants?
I mean, there has been a kind of a consistent complaint that Minnesota is an expensive place to do business. Some of that has to do with taxation policies. People get a lot for the taxation. I mean, I do feel like the state has historically delivered on the promise of that taxation, whereas you have some places that may have relatively high taxation, like Chicago, where people complain that,
for
don't
this
get a lot,
much,
don't get a lot for this.
Yeah.
The standard of living is high here, especially if you're white and educated. But I do think that more and more people are asking, what are we getting enough for this? Or as a business, if my cost of business is 20% less if I relocate my business, what are the downsides? Do I have a less educated workforce? Do I have a different customer base? Certainly there's subset of businesses are local. You're not going to move your business to Nashville and serve St. Paul. But I do think it has a reputation of being an expensive place to do business.
I think this is the opportunity for Minnesota, for somebody with a little political power to make a bit of a change here. I think this is an avenue that is a little bit under discussed. And I just would like, we're so proud of our big corporations and all of this stuff, but also, I just want to make sure that the business community is not fleeing, that they want to be here, that they see that opportunity. I think that's really important, and I think it's missing.
Right. As we talked about, I just think there is a kind of demonization of business in general, or a contempt for it. The state is losing population. It is losing young people at a net rate, which is problematic. I did an article years ago about the university and at U of M and its undergraduate programs, which it was focusing on. And it was making really strong efforts to recruit out-of-state students to the U, high-caliber students with discounting of tuition and stuff. And the legislature didn't like that because they wanted any discounting that went into place to go for Minnesota kids, which is, what the legislature would normally do. But the U's point of view was, we are not graduating enough Minnesota kids from high school that are capable of college level work to sustain the workforce and the intellectual kind of foundation of the state. if we don't bring people here to be educated, we are going to have a long-term chronic problem. And the legislature just couldn't see that because their thinking is too short-term. So, that's an issue, and I don't think that's changed.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a net outflow. Certain, kids want to go to college away from home, and historically, a surprising number have come back. Gavin Kaysen, people like Gavin Kaysen, but it's not enough to keep the equilibrium.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
That's where we are. Okay. Figure anything out, or did we just talk about what the problems were again?
It's hard to figure stuff out.
Okay, but it's not all bad, right? Like we still see progress. We still see new places opening, right? I mean,
oh yeah, the industry isn't in free fall.
Okay, right? Like it doesn't feel like that to me either. It did, but I think if you're opening now, you can kind of place it in where we are now a little better and understanding pricing a little better, and those shifts are kind of gone. Like we're a couple years more away. I want there to be that spirit. And talking about the difficulties doesn't mean it's not possible. It's more like, hey, here's the reality of this. Where do you want to put your business?
Right.
What neighborhood maybe could you be excited about?
How do you adapt to the new reality, or how do you work with it?
Because like if it's a person with passion that opens these businesses, or any small business owner probably has a little bit more skin in the game and in the whole deal. We want these folks to feel like there is opportunity here, and I see it, but also time and timing for say dinette are different now. I didn't actually, and I just want to talk to you about this. I didn't actually announce the closure of Saint Dinette.
I know. I watched that play out.
You watched that play out?
Well, I just in social media and media the article and.
So,
because we talked about that when I interviewed you X number of months ago, and I thought very carefully about how I would talk about that with you and what I would say or what I would print of what you said, because I did not want to create a run on the bank, so to speak. Because we do have we have a limited amount of power in the media, but you put a word out in somebody's mind and they start telling their friends, and then suddenly
the game of telephone is we're already closed. After 4 people hear it, they hear that we're closed.
Right.
It's funny that
what you said is you have an expiring lease and you're contemplating whether you can renew it or can you stay.
It's probable. It's even probable, highly probable that we'll close. But the building's potentially up for sale. The new owner could come to us and be like, "Yo, we want to keep you." We're open to that, but we'd have to see some sort of financial signal,
right?
That would be like, boom, lights on, that works. Let's give this a try,
And people don't. The lease part of the business is often the least understood by the public. That when you're asked to renew your lease, it's not like somebody renewing their apartment lease. It's usually not for a year. It's for 5 years. It's for 10 years. And so you have to. You're
even
making
3
or even 3, and you're making a long commitment, and you have to ask yourself, what can I expect to happen? And if you're really uncertain, it's hard to make that commitment.
Right. So the timing of coming out of a lease right now is not just good for the business. Time has passed. We're 10 years old. There's it's a really good restaurant still. I'm so proud of it. Do not stop coming to Saint Dinette, because Mackenzie and Walker are really doing very good food right now. Like it's good.
Yeah, I was here the other night. It was as good as it's ever been.
Yes, sir. I believe that, and we all have our bumps and our whatever, and things change or whatever. But we've clawed our way back to being exactly who I think we've kind of always been. But there's still always work. So the article said Tim Niver announced, but they didn't use the quote. Right. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't think I said we were going to close. I can't personally make that decision. That's not up to me. I have partners. So I was like,
you have to call Mayor Carter.
I know Mayor Carter is not my partner.
Doesn't the mayor tell you if you can close?
No.
Oh, not yet.
No, I mean, he didn't help
I'm
me stay
joking.
open. I mean, necessarily, I don't know. But so, like, and there was no real verification on the Star Trib sign. They didn't call and say, "Hey, Niver, is this true? That's not how I heard it."
We all republish what somebody else has put out often. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody called me though. Like, I'm the most open dude. Like, you could call me and be like, "Here's the headline. Is this accurate?" St. Paul Bistro to close in March 2025. I was like, wow. I mean, that's possible. I didn't get mad. Should I have gotten mad? Would you have gotten mad?
Being part of the profession, I would say I would have gotten mad.
Because I called everybody involved, and I was like, hey,
and I'm sure they were like, oh no, we're sorry.
Yeah,
right.
It's not accurate. But I'm like, all of a sudden, but I'm still closed. Whoever read that, everybody's like, hit me up on the phone. Oh, I'm sorry to hear you're closing. I'm like, I can't tell the story to 500 people, over the next 6 months about it.
Too many people who write food don't understand business.
Well, I mean, could you say the same about city councils?
Yeah, sure. Right. And so when I'm not trying to pat myself, I guess I am trying to pat myself on the back. When we talked and when I published that Q&A with you, I knew what could happen by some premature announcement or saying too specifically something that was still just theoretical.
Yeah.
And I just think a lot of the mentality, there's a few people who are still doing reviewing and don't cover the openings and closings, but most of the food writing that's going on in town right now is what's new, what's hot, who's leaving, who's coming, and you want to be first with that. That's how everybody is judged. And somebody got something that they felt like they could be first with, and then some other people saw it and they were like, damn, we didn't get this first. We better get it out to our readers so they don't think they have to go to the Pioneer Press to get their new restaurant news. And it's just like, oh, wow. And then wait,
Yeah.
you just threw a bomb into the intersection and now there's a crater. And
yeah. Well, I'm going to use it. I'm going to use what happened to my benefit. I was tactically putting out there in the news that we were contemplating the closure. I mean, I was trying to potentially induce a buyer, a new building owner. I was trying to, state my case as to the effective things that are going on down here to, again, maybe induce some sort of offer or the idea that we were leaving is important and here's why, and I'm not blaming it on St. Paul time and timing, all these things. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that you have to consider when you're going into, like, I have not paid myself for the last 18 months other than little smidgens. I still come almost every Saturday and another day, I'm not getting paid for this at all.
Right. And people don't understand that either.
Yeah. Well, and I'm only saying it because, what we're doing is to keep the business going for the people who are working here to fulfill the commitment of our lease. And while we see improvements of some sorts long term, it's just really hard to see them specifically enough to determine that we'd be here. If somebody came in and made us an offer, maybe. Or if somebody wanted to come in and, maybe the turnover is good for a new business owner that wants to come talk to me about what would it take for me to get into this space. I don't know, like, that's all important to me. And that was tactically why I've been talking about what resonates with me with business, what resonates with me with the cities, what resonates with me about the opportunity of turning this into something else for somebody else. I mean, I'm pretty excited about that. And it's not all bad. When a place closes, it's not all a huge fire sale or, some sort of, squalor that we're sending out. Our messages are still the same. And it's been a really cool and vital place. Think about what we've done for 10 years down here, and, that we've kept our voice and that we kept our quality. And so I thought that media thing was a little bit funny, but I thought I should bring it up also to clarify to folks that we are going to be here at least till the end of March, open, vital, and all of that. And thanks for helping not spread the word of our closure when we spoke last. Adam, is there anything else you want to ask of me or that we should get out in the open? Have we cleared the air?
I guess so. It was a very practical, serious discussion.
Yeah, it was cool. And I knew this is what I would get from you. And I like having your perspective and seeing it from, say, not necessarily flying over the battle, but kind of flying over the battle in a way and kind of looking down on it. I've always appreciated your angle. I always appreciate your opinions, whether I agree with them or not. Thank you for sharing them. Nothing was outlandish, by the way. You didn't say anything outlandish.
Really
yeah,
didn't? Okay.
You kept it in check today. I think pretty good. I wasn't sure.
I'm trying to.
I didn't want you to. I thought you were going to lambaste
Someone?
Yeah, something more. But you put it out there. It's good.
Yeah. I think the social media era really, for me, has chastened me a little bit. I mean, I don't really feel like I'm a huge bomb thrower, but I do feel like it is so easy to go off half-cocked now with social media.
Oh, yeah.
And you really have to
watch your
keep that in mind.
Yeah. Well, and like meeting with you like this and saying things, I could be a broken record for folks. I kind of repeat things over and over. My messages are clear, though. I want businesses to survive. I want businesses to thrive. I want entrepreneurs to feel it and go with it. I want people with creativity to have opportunity. I want, and that does mean profit. And I just, you've helped me kind of gain a little, maybe a clearer perspective on what I'm feeling. Some of it being correct, some of it maybe looking forward a little differently. So,
well, I think I'm not blowing smoke here, I don't think. I think you're a great advocate for the reality of the industry. You are not some guy, living out of market who's got 16 identical restaurants all over the country complaining about the business climate in Minnesota. You live here. Your social values are clearly stated. You are not coming at this from an exploitive perspective, but you are saying it's hard right now, and there may be structural things about the way we're doing this that need to change, or there are going to be casualties. And I think that's as authentic as you can get. I mean, I hope you'll keep talking about it.
Thanks. It's not blowing smoke. It ended up being kind of the purpose. I didn't start necessarily with having that be a purpose, but, and it's not always going to be the essence of the show, but certainly it is to get inside the business and, understand it a little deeper. Like I said, in the context of learning, like this is what I'm doing, I'm learning. So my mistakes will be part of that. The things that I say wrong will be part of that. And I still feel like I need to be open enough to do it without hesitation. I think I need it. I need to say it.
Yeah.
So, hey, Adam Platt, thank you so much.
Anytime.
I appreciate you. Thanks, boss.